Never step into that school after midnight. That's what the fruit vendor on the corner told me while he wrapped lychees in old newspaper and refused to look toward the hill. He said the wind there doesn't move the same way after 12. It doesn't push, it pulls. I didn't believe him. I had a camera, a flashlight, and a story to chase in Kowloon, where concrete remembers more than people do. There was a drum once, a ceremonial one, hung in the assembly hall of a colonial-era secondary school that burned in 1998. It marked mornings and farewells and exam days. The fire took 6, they said. The authorities sealed the gates. The city grew around the ruin, and the drum should have slept forever. But if you stand on Tung Choi Street at midnight, you'll hear 3 slow strikes that don't belong to any clock. They don't echo. They arrive, heavy and close, like something breathing at your shoulder. I told myself it was construction noise from the night shift near Prince Edward. I told myself neon hum can mimic anything when the air is wet and the sky presses low. Then I found the rusted school gate and the blackened crest above it. On the other side, something waited for. Time to hit 12 again, and it wanted company. Structure followed per your template. Her name was Mei Lin, a night shift janitor who worked at a nearby shopping arcade. Every evening, she would clock out around 11:30, just when the neon signs of Mong Kok began to buzz louder than the streets themselves. On her way home, she passed the iron gates of the abandoned Kowloon Secondary School. For years, she had kept her head low, clutching her plastic grocery bag, pretending the ruin didn't exist. But one night, exhaustion slowed her steps. She lingered. Behind the rusted bars, she saw the silhouette of the old assembly hall. Its roof was broken, vines climbing through the shattered windows. Yet the structure still held a kind of grim dignity, as if the building refused to collapse until someone acknowledged its grief. Mei Lin was not the kind of woman who believed in ghosts. She was practical, living paycheck to paycheck, saving for her son's tuition. Ghost stories, in her eyes, were for tourists or bored teenagers. Yet she had grown up in this district. She remembered the fire in 1998. The smoke had spread across the skyline, choking the night. Rumors said that students had pounded on the locked doors of the hall, and no one had come. The city whispered about the tragedy for a year, and then moved on. But the drum, the ceremonial drum that once commanded silence during assemblies, remained inside. Every midnight, she heard it. 3 hollow strikes that cut through the static of the city. At first, she told herself it was construction work or a truck unloading crates at the wet market. But she knew rhythms. Her father had been a drummer in a Cantonese opera troupe, and this rhythm was deliberate, slow, ritualistic, carrying grief inside every beat. Standing before the gate, she realized her body had stopped obeying her. Her eyes locked on the hall, her ears waiting for the next strike. And when it came, her heart tightened, as if someone inside the ruins had called her name. The first time Lin truly noticed something unusual, it was raining. Kowloon's narrow streets were slick with neon reflections, and the gutters coughed up cigarette butts with every passing taxi. She hurried beneath her broken umbrella, head bent against the storm. When she reached the old school gates, the downpour seemed to hush, as if the rain itself refused to fall on the ruin. She stopped, puzzled. The street behind her hissed with water, yet the cracked courtyard inside remained eerily dry. And then it came, thump, thump, thump. 3 strikes, clear, hollow, echoing from the assembly hall. But the sound carried no reverberation, as though the drum was being beaten in her chest rather than in the distance. Her heart jolted. She looked around, searching for someone else who might have heard it. The noodle vendor across the road kept ladling broth. The security guard at the electronics shop dozed in his chair. The world continued, blind to what had stopped her in her tracks. The following night, it happened again. Same rhythm, same hour. This time, she tried to rationalize. Perhaps the vibrations of nearby construction were bouncing strangely off the derelict building. She had seen the scaffolding a few blocks away. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that the beats had a human intention behind them. By the third night, Mei Lin had convinced herself it was her imagination. She brought along her phone, determined to record proof, or at least expose the silence that would make her laugh at her own foolishness later. At 11:59, she aimed the camera through the rusted bars. The hall sat in darkness, its broken windows like hollow eyes. Midnight arrived. Thump, thump, thump. Her phone froze. The red recording light blinked once, then the screen went black. No low battery, no error message, just dead silence. At that exact moment, she felt a gust of wind from inside the courtyard. Though the night around her was still, the smell followed. Acrid, smoky, the unmistakable stench of charred wood and burned cloth. She stumbled backward, clutching her useless phone. When she looked up again, a shape moved behind the shattered window of the hall. It wasn't distinct, just a blur, the height of a schoolboy, standing where no living child could. The shadow lingered. For a second, then melted back into the dark. For hours afterward, she argued with herself. Maybe the smell came from a nearby food stall. Perhaps the phone malfunctioned because of the humidity. Shadows can be tricks of headlights glancing off broken glass. She wanted to believe all of it, but deep down she knew the rhythm wasn't random. It was calling. The next evening, she tried to avoid the route entirely, taking the long way around through side alleys choked with crates and mopeds. Yet her steps slowed at the intersection, and before she realized it, she had drifted back toward the gate. Her body betrayed her, drawn as if by invisible strings. Midnight struck. The drum answered. This time, she didn't just hear it. She felt a vibration ripple through the soles of her shoes, up her legs, into her bones. And with it came a whisper, so faint she wasn't sure it was real. It wasn't Cantonese. It wasn't Mandarin. It was the hushed chant of students reciting in unison, their voices thin, dry, as if carried from lungs filled with smoke. Her practical mind screamed for an explanation. Broken pipes, echoes of the city, but no part of her truly believed it. And that was when the fear began to take root, curling deep inside her, waiting to bloom into something darker. For days, Mei Lin carried the weight of those midnight drums inside her chest. At work, as she scrubbed the tiled floors of the shopping arcade, she caught herself tapping the mop handle against the ground, 3 hollow strikes, slow and deliberate. The sound startled her each time. It was as if the rhythm had taken root in her muscles, teaching her body to mimic it against her will. She tried to confide in her coworker, a woman named Mrs. Wong, who often joked about superstitions. "You're just tired," Mrs. Wong said, waving her cigarette in dismissal. "When you work too many nights, you start hearing things. The city makes its own ghosts." But the city's ghosts did not follow her home. This one did. One dawn, as she collapsed in a bed, Mei Lin awoke to the smell of smoke. Panic jolted her upright. The apartment was silent. No flames flickered. Yet the odor lingered. Burnt timber, singed cloth. On her dresser, her son's school uniform lay folded. The sleeve was dusted with a thin, black ash that disintegrated when she touched it. Her rational mind rebelled. Perhaps it was dust from construction. Perhaps her nose played tricks. But she began to sense a pattern. Every time the drums sounded, something small slipped from the ruin into her world. A smell, a sound, a trace of ash. She decided to investigate. The following evening, She stopped by a newsstand that still sold yellowed tabloids in plastic sleeves. After some hesitation, she asked the old vendor about the fire at the Kowloon Secondary School. His face tightened, lips pressed thin. "You shouldn't ask," he muttered. 6 gone that night. The teacher, 5 students. The doors were locked from the outside. At least, that's what they said. But the report disappeared. No one wanted to know why. He leaned closer, voice dropping. One of them was the drum captain. The boy loved that instrument more than his own breath. They say he struck until the roof caved in. Madeline shivered. The man refused to say more. That night, she lingered at the gates again. Midnight came. Thump, thump, thump. The vibration slid beneath her skin. But now, another sound followed. The faint shuffle of feet, as though rows of students marched across the courtyard. Their cadence matched the beat. She pressed her face to the bars, straining to see. The courtyard was empty, but her ears told another story. Suddenly, the padlock on the gate rattled. It did not fall open, but it shifted as if nudged from within. Her breath caught. Instinct screamed at her to run. Yet curiosity, some force beyond her own will, held her rooted in place. Over the next week, the phenomena worsened. Lights flickered in her apartment at exactly midnight. Her reflection, caught in the arcade's darkened shop windows, sometimes lagged half a second behind her movements. Once, as she turned a corner, she swore she glimpsed a boy in a soot-stained uniform walking beside her. When she blinked, he was gone. Her fear grew, but so did her compulsion. She felt as though the drumbeat was digging a hollow inside her, an emptiness that demanded to be filled. She began researching late into the night, combing old forums, abandoned message boards. Stories echoed each other. People who dared to step into the courtyard heard not just the drum, but voices pleading for release. A handful never came back out. She told herself she would never cross the threshold. The gates, rusted and locked, were her shield. But one evening, as she passed by, she found a chain dangling loose, the padlock split clean in half. It looked neither rusted nor forced, simply broken, as though time itself had given way. Her stomach dropped. The courtyard lay open, waiting. The shadows inside seemed deeper than the night around her, and from that darkness came the rhythm, steady and patient. Thump, thump, thump. It was no longer just a sound. It was an invitation. When Maylin finally dared to step beyond the broken gate, the air shifted. The city's sounds dimmed, as though the courtyard existed in a pocket of silence removed from Kowloon's restless heartbeat. The cracked pavement was littered with weeds, yet each step she took echoed unnaturally loud, like footsteps inside a hollow shell. She walked toward the assembly hall. Its windows were jagged. Teeth, the roof sagging as if exhausted from holding decades of sorrow. The heavy drum was visible through the doorway, its surface split and blackened, but somehow intact. A single moonbeam touched, its rim illuminating streaks of soot that looked like claw marks. Her breath grew shallow. She reached for her phone to take a photo, but the screen flared white, displaying lines of static instead of an image. Then, without her pressing anything, an old news article flickered across the display, a page she had never searched for. The headline was blurred, but fragments of text were clear. Locked doors, teacher accused, students trapped. She dropped the phone in shock. The screen went dark. A voice rose behind her. Thin, breathless, almost a whisper. "Help us." She spun around. The hall was empty, yet the smell of smoke swelled, so thick it burned her eyes. Shapes began to form in the haze, small figures, their uniforms charred, their outlines trembling like film projected. On smoke, her knees weakened. She wanted to flee, but her body refused. The figures turned toward the drum. One boy stepped forward, taller than the rest, his hands wrapped around invisible sticks. His face was half-burnt shadow, half-child, and his eyes glowed with sorrow more than rage. The drum thundered once. Mei Lin flinched, covering her ears, but the sound came not from outside. It came from inside her chest, rattling her bones. The boy raised his head. For an instant, she saw the truth flicker around him. Barred doors, students pounding, the teacher's desperate shouts. Flames climbing the walls. She saw the boy striking the drum again and again, trying to call for help until the roof collapsed. His last act had been to sound the alarm. No one answered. Tears streamed down her cheeks. The whispers multiplied, dozens of voices overlapping. We were left. We were forgotten. Remember us. Suddenly, the drum cracked. A jagged line tore through its blackened surface, releasing a burst of hot wind that extinguished the moonlight. In that suffocating dark, Mei Lin understood. The midnight rhythm was not a curse. It was a memorial. The trapped souls replayed their final moment, calling for someone, anyone, to remember their suffering. Her fear twisted into grief. She whispered back, her voice shaking, "I hear you. I won't forget." The air stilled. For the first time, the drum remained silent. The figures blurred, dissolving into smoke that drifted upward, as though following a current Mei Lin could not see. The boy lingered last, his burnt face softening into something almost human. He lowered his invisible sticks, bowed his head, and vanished. She stood alone in the ruin. The silence was heavier than the drumbeats had ever been, and yet beneath it, she felt the weight of countless eyes, grateful, sorrowful, and still unwilling to leave. The silence after the smoke figures vanished was worse than the drumbeat. Mei Lin's pulse hammered in her ears, so loud she wondered if the ghosts had lodged the rhythm inside her body forever. She backed away from the assembly hall door, but the floor beneath her feet shifted. The tiles no longer felt solid. They rippled as if she stood on a thin sheet of ice floating over water. Then the drum spoke again, not the 3 measured strikes she had come to dread. This time it roared, rapid and violent, like 1,000 fists slamming in unison. The sound tore through the ruined hall, rattling windows, shaking loose plaster from the ceiling. Mei Lin fell to her knees, clutching her head, but the noise penetrated deeper, vibrating inside her skull, drilling into her thoughts. She looked up. The boy was back, no longer a half-shadow. This time he stood whole, though his skin was scorched black, his uniform burned away in patches. His hands gripped 2 drumsticks carved from ash. When he struck the drum, the hall itself warped. Walls bent inward, shadows lengthened, the air turned molten. "Why do you stay?" Mei Lin gasped, her voice trembling. "You should be free." The boy's mouth opened, but no sound emerged. Instead, a vision burst around her. Children pounding on locked doors, their screams swallowed by flames. The teacher coughing blood, trying to shield them. And above it all, the boy striking the drum. Not to escape, but to mark every death as it came. He raised his sticks again. The drum's skin glowed red, as if it burned from. The boy's eyes flared, 2 coals smoldering in the smoke. He swung down. The strike did not hit the drum. It hit her. A shockwave hurled her across the hall, slamming her into a cracked column. Pain ripped through her chest, but when she looked down, no wound was visible. Instead, black soot spread across her blouse in the shape of 2 sticks crossing. Her breath faltered. The boy had marked her. The world tilted. Flames licked up the walls, though nothing burned. Shadows of children circled her, their mouths open in silent screams, their eyes, hollow and pleading, fixed on her. The chant began again. Remember us. Remember us. She realized the boy wasn't trying to destroy her. He was trying to bind her, to make her the vessel for their memory, the living drum that would never stop beating. No, she cried, forcing herself to stand. I can't carry all of you, but I will tell your story. I will not let you fade. The shadows closed in. The boy lifted his sticks one last time, fire coiling around his arms. The drum pulsed like a heart, preparing to split the air. Mei Lin threw herself forward, slamming her palms against the drums. Cracked surface. A blinding flash erupted. Heat and ash burst outward, swallowing sound, swallowing sight. She braced for pain, but instead felt a cool breeze wash over her like spring air flowing. Through an open window, the voices rose in unison, no longer pleading but singing, their chant transforming into something mournful yet peaceful. When the light dimmed, the hall was quiet. The drum lay shattered at her feet, split into fragments. The boy was gone. The shadows, the fire, the suffocating smoke, gone. Only the acrid smell lingered, faint but real. Mei Lin collapsed, trembling. For the first time in weeks, her body was her own. Yet on her chest, where the soot mark had appeared, a faint bruise remained in the shape of crossed sticks. She knew what it meant. The burden was not erased. It had merely changed form. She had taken a final beat for them, and now the memory lived inside her. When Mei Lin stumbled back through the gates, dawn was breaking over Kowloon. The city stirred awake, vendors opening shutters, buses grumbling down Nathan Road. To everyone else, it was just another morning, but she felt different, as though she had walked out of another world entirely. Her hands were black with soot, though she had touched nothing but the drum. She wiped them on her clothes, but the stains clung stubbornly, like ink etched into her skin. That night, for the first time in weeks, the clock struck midnight without the drum sounding. The silence pressed heavy against the windows of her apartment, but it was a silence she welcomed. She lay awake, listening, half expecting the rhythm to return. It didn't. Days passed. The smell of smoke no longer haunted her. Corridors, shadows no longer followed in glass reflections. Yet the bruise on her chest remained. Each morning, she traced its faint outline. 2 sticks crossing, a brand only she could see. She knew what it meant. The spirits had released their nightly ritual, but their story now lived inside her. She carried their memory, their grief, their unanswered cries. Sometimes, while walking past the ruins, she felt a breeze brush her cheek, soft, almost grateful. The school remained abandoned, its hall empty, the broken drums scattered across the floor. But she sensed the children no longer lingered there. They had followed the sound of their final beat into the silence beyond. Still, every now and then, as she drifted to sleep, she heard it. Not 3 hollow strikes, but a single, faint thump deep inside her chest. A reminder, a warning, and the thought chilled her. If she ever forgot their story, if she ever let their memory fade, perhaps the drum would begin again. Some stories of ghosts are not about vengeance. They are about remembrance. The children of Kowloon Secondary did not rise from the ashes to hunt the living. They rose because the world had sealed their tragedy behind rusted gates and pretended it never happened. Their midnight ritual was not a curse, but a plea to be seen, to be remembered, to not vanish into silence. Mei Lin understood this. Too late. The bruise on her chest, the faint rhythm echoing inside her, was not a punishment but a covenant. She had become the witness they needed, the drum they could no longer strike. Her fear had bound her to them, but her compassion freed them. And yet, the lesson remains. Cities like Hong Kong bury their secrets quickly, beneath new towers, fresh paint, and busy markets. But the earth remembers. The walls remember. And sometimes, when the air grows still and midnight arrives, those memories claw their way back, demanding acknowledgement. So the warning is simple. If you pass the ruins in Kowloon and hear the echo of a drum in your chest, pause and listen. Not every haunting seeks to harm. Some only ask that you carry their story forward. Because the moment we forget the dead, we become their silence.